I'm all alone. There's no one here besides me. My problems have all gone.
What problems?
There's no one to delight in me. But you
The
gotta
song
have
from.
friends.
All right, don't care. Fine, I'll let you come inside.
I don't think that's how the scene played out.
No. Welcome back to the Pursuit of Progress, everybody. We're thrilled that you're taking time out of your day to come and talk about cool stuff with us, me, Dane, and my buddy Trey, as we talk about groundbreaking technology that is improving humanity, leading us towards a brighter future. And hopefully you listen to that and feel inspired and optimistic about the direction that things are heading. Um, without further ado, Trey, you reached out to me earlier this week and you were super enthusiastic about Microsoft's Build event and some of the stuff that they unveiled. What maybe set the stage for us, give us some context. What did Microsoft show and what were your overall thoughts on what they unveiled?
Sure, yeah. So it's probably one of the biggest keynotes I've seen for a company to do in a long time. Uh, it is really showcasing the really all what Microsoft is working on and the implement specifically around the integration of AI into their entire platform. So most people already know that they're going to integrate what they're calling Copilot into their infrastructure. So really, anything you can think of when you talk to ChatGPT, you can now do inside the Microsoft suite of things. So you have a PowerPoint that you want to make. Instead of creating all the animations, all the illustrations, you can literally just talk to it and say, create for me a pitch deck about this. And it will just generate for you all of the illustrations, all the animations, even creating talking point notes, you name it. And that's just in isolation and across all of these different tools. What makes it great too is that you can now talk to it and it will talk across the entire breadth of the entire Microsoft ecosystem, the 365 ecosystem. So super powerful. Like imagine having the best executive assistant that is not just your executive assistant; it's also your analyst. It's your negotiator consultant. It's your sales pitch developer. It's everything all in one place, and it never forgets. It's always there. On top of that, it really seems like they're becoming what I'm calling the everything platform. So one of the things right now, especially with data, integrating data into a essentially from raw to a visualization that an everyday person can understand coherently requires a lot of different people and a lot of different steps. And usually those are all very siloed in how that actually happens. And so one of the biggest things that they showcased was what they call Microsoft Fabric. And so Fabric is, and I'm going to try and layman's term it because it is very complex, but just imagine uh, before you had essentially data everywhere. It wasn't consolidated into one location. And then even if it was just messy and you really didn't know how to clean this. So you had to get experts to clean it. And then so then you had that group doing it, but it was still kind of in isolation over there. And then you have over here, people that are trying to then take that cleaned up data to visualize it and organize it to then produce it for everybody to actually ingest and understand. Now, with Fabric, you can do that entire process collaboratively across the entire ecosystem with security, with transparency, and there's no more questions from the front end to the back end of where all of this data is and how it's being processed. So it it really is mind blowing. And it's all again housed within the 365 ecosystem. So now Copilot is you're able to talk to it in this environment as well. So truly incredible innovation that's coming just from Microsoft and what they're doing there. And that's still just scratching the surface. Uh, the plugins feature that we talked about in a previous video, they're now going to be integrating into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem as well. And the development of those plugins are going to be even more seamless with how they're building the dev platform for that. So for the nerds out there listening to this, they're just going to streamline that entire process so you don't need to have this senior programmer to be able to know all of how to develop the APIs and all that for getting this data chunk to the 365 platform. Uh, yeah, I mean that was kind of it in a nutshell. There's still way more, and if y'all want to nerd out, I would highly recommend checking out the 6-hour keynote that they had over the course of those 2 days. But those are the big highlights.
Okay, so this is so Copilot and what Microsoft is essentially doing here with the integration of ChatGPT and AI and creating Copilot. This is a game changer for the enterprise software stack. So integrated into applications like your email, like your Teams meetings, your PowerPoint decks, anything that sits within the Microsoft stack, you'll be able to have this AI assistant that you can speak to conversationally and ask it to do stuff for you. It's also a game changer for people that develop software products because you can you can ask it to create a website for you or write a piece of code that does a certain function. Um, for any of us that have had to build uh, PowerPoint presentations or things of that nature, what you can essentially do is if you have an example, so maybe I did everything manually today, if you have an example of maybe you just have like some updated data and you want to recreate the presentation, but you want to update it with a couple of things. All you have to do is go into Copilot, upload, say, hey, this is the style and format of a presentation that I used in the past. I want to update it with this information, and you can tell it to do it, and it'll do it. It'll create it in the same style. You can even ask it to throw in animations, things like that. So that's pretty neat. Um, then the fabric is probably the most interesting part because they've in the last couple of years there've been so many companies that have spun up and reached tens of billions of dollars in terms of valuation because data is essentially the currency of this decade. I mean, it became incredibly important over the last decade, but having access to data and being able to draw intelligence from that data that's what this decade is going to be about. Um, but the speed at which you'll be able to do it because these companies are aggregating data from so many different platforms. You've got your ERP system, which like houses your financials. Maybe you have a CRM piece of software like Salesforce, and then maybe you have some custom tools. Essentially, it allows you to compile all of this data into one massive data lake, which the like a visualization tool like Power BI would just sit on, and you can ask. You don't even need to necessarily build reports manually yourself. You can say, I am the CEO. I want to have an executive summary of the things that are I want to have an executive summary of how my company is doing. Give me a dashboard that shows where my company's at. And it'll be able to do that for you. So the speed at which people will be able to execute is just going to be unprecedented. And in terms of productivity boost, I mean, things like think about having remote meetings. They already have transcription functionality, so as you're talking in a meeting, it's recording who's saying what. You can configure it in a way that Copilot will automatically summarize. You can create summaries of the meeting. You can pull out the actions. So instead of people in the meeting, maybe you have one person that's just there taking notes, or maybe everyone's taking notes individually. You don't need to do that anymore because you can dedicate your attention fully towards the conversation and what you as the person are actually there to do
Hmm.
as a knowledge worker, and have the AI do all of that for you. Create your summary, create your actions automatically. Maybe it like asks you, hey, are these like the right things? Maybe you like edit one thing or two and then distribute that out to the rest of the team. So it's a huge amount of mental bandwidth that is saved by the integration of Copilot into the entire Office suite. Um, and just overall, it's going to be like a 10x, 10 times boost to productivity, I think at least. Um, so it's an absolute game changer, and I think it's really interesting. That's the enterprise play, but then I mean, you mentioned that still, I think, early days of figuring out how plugins are going to be used in the enterprise space. Obviously, the first step is to prove that the technology works, and then you can start building a community of developers around that.
Hmm.
But then on the consumer side of things, you have folks like you and me that are using ChatGPT and other platforms for just things in our consumer lives, like getting groceries or finding a house or anything. So I think it's really, this was probably will go down in the history books as this one of the smartest acquisitions that Microsoft ever made.
Hmm.
Or maybe not acquisition, it's not acquired, but it's 49% owned by them. So
Very close partnership.
very, very, very close partnership. I mean, they are tied at the hip at this point.
Yeah.
So absolute baller move for Satya Nadella. Congratulations to him and team for spotting this. And I think that what they're building on the Office suite is is incredible. And me as a knowledge worker, I'm looking forward to being able to have access to Copilot because I know there's already so many use cases that I have in my mind about how I can 10x my productivity. Now, one thing that Microsoft already struggles with, and something that they've struggled with in terms of regulators in the past, are antitrust violations. Trey, do you think that there's any possibility that the government steps in and says um, that? Do you think that there'll be any antitrust concerns raised by regulators in this regard because of just one, like how powerful the platform is? OpenAI was originally supposed to be this open source thing, so that no one person could control it or set the direction in it. But it seems like Microsoft has an iron grip on that right now. Do you think that there's any chance that regulators step in and say no bueno?
Always a possibility. I think though, since they are keeping it all within their private cloud with the Azure privacy, like I would say if regulators have already given the green light to Microsoft with the regulations they have and the parameters they've put within that Azure security, I don't see where there will be an infringement on that. At least anything that's enforceable. If truly that Microsoft's done their due diligence to now set up the securities measures in place there, because um, yeah. So I mean, I guess that's my feedback on the security piece. I think if they do want to try and come at Microsoft, they're going to be fighting an uphill battle that I don't think they're going to win if they do. So, I mean, I guess what do you think?
I mean, just for contrast, haven't regulators blocked the acquisition of Activision?
Ah, it's a good point.
And Activision seems like a way less impactful societally and for the company, way less impactful acquisition compared to something like OpenAI. I know it's not technically an acquisition, and
Maybe
maybe
that's a
that's
strategic
where
play.
the 4D chess moves are coming from the Microsoft team, because it's not perceived as an acquisition,
Yeah.
but it makes you think. For those who don't know, Activision is essentially a video game company. They develop and have a bunch of popular franchises of video games, and that acquisition was blocked I can only imagine because there's antitrust concerns around Microsoft having exclusive access to Activision's content and only making that content available on their Xbox gaming platform, which would severely impact Sony, who's the company that makes the PlayStations. It would severely impact their ability to sell and offer games. Not super familiar as to what the regulators are saying. I just know that it's been blocked, but it seems odd that a gaming company potential exclusive rights to video games is blocked, but then you have this game-changing AI technology, and the regulators, I haven't really heard anything
Yeah.
from them about it other than wanting to put in place safety measures to make sure that there's no negative consequences for humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I personally haven't considered the privacy side of things. Obviously, very important. Um, so yeah, no, I guess more to come on that. I have no doubt there's going to be a try at least to slow this down. We've already seen, obviously, Sam Altman going to the regulators last week and discussing that. So if Sam Altman over OpenAI is already saying, "Hey, we need y'all's help to regulate us," I'm sure we're going to
Yeah.
be getting that. So
Yeah, yeah, he totally played it into their hand and told them exactly what they wanted to hear. I mean, overall, I thought I was pretty impressed. Most times when I try to watch a congressional hearing, I don't make it through the whole thing because it's just a bunch of politicians showboating and peddling the issues that are most important to them in their jurisdiction, which some of that certainly happened, but for the most part, I think that they were asking some of the right questions, and Sam seemed to be very cooperative, and so far seems like he's on the right side of things,
mm-hmm.
at least in terms of saying, "Hey, yeah, we need to regulate this." But another way of looking at this is maybe they're doing that, and so they're getting on the good side of the regulator, saying, "Hey, yeah, let's regulate this," but then it becomes a bit of a regulatory capture issue, where they benefit because they exist already,
Mm-hmm.
but it may stifle um, any other companies that would want to spin up in that scenario because then if they put in place legislation that says if you want to have this super cluster of GPUs, which are graphical processing units, which are basically the hardware behind what powers all of these neural networks and AI platforms, if you suddenly have to jump through all of these hurdles, it raises the barrier to entry, right? So it makes it harder for other companies to spin up and compete. So maybe that's a part of the angle that they're going through there. So it'll be interesting to see how that all unfolds. The other question that I had for you is you said it's becoming like this the everything platform. Do you think use it like we both have backgrounds in supply chain and sourcing. Um, in a perfect world, no company would want to be completely dependent on a single company to provide goods or services. From the supply chain perspective, it's incredibly risky because think about um, if you were if I was Apple and you're making iPhones and then you only have one supplier for this particular critical component that your iPhone needs in order to be able to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then God forbid there's a hurricane or some other natural disaster or there's a war going on in Ukraine. Maybe there's military conflict that can disrupt that part of your supply chain. If you don't have an alternative supplier that you can go to, then you don't sell any products. You don't sell any products for a long enough period of time, your business goes insolvent. So typically, multi-sourcing is a strategy that companies will use to de-risk their supply chains. Do you think that there's any risk of companies becoming overly reliant on one particular provider for all of the software that is critical to running their business?
I think, I guess in your scenario, you're arguing about a single supplier of product, like, and talking about raw material. This is about data, and so thinking of Microsoft, they have various locations of where their data is being housed, where how it's being processed. So when talking about diversification, essentially we are, if you're working with Microsoft, you're already working with a diversified supplier
Mhm.
in a way, because they've already hedged all of their risk. I would imagine they've built the infrastructure to hedge all that risk.
Right. From a
Um,
physical location standpoint, what I'm thinking more of is from the leverage that Microsoft has in negotiations with companies.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean it. They are definitely making it hard for other companies to compete. That's not good from a you know competitive standpoint, and for other companies, and companies who are going to work with Microsoft to have a competitive advantage. I agree. I want to see other platforms as a service come up, but Microsoft's done the work. They've been around for forever, and they have honed in. They got the brand, and now these standalone companies like your Snowflakes, like your SAP, uh, you're just not going to, unless if they can broaden their scope to compete more generally across the landscape. It's just going to be a no brainer for companies to say, yeah, Microsoft has the whole suite, and why would you not want? So it's it's a double edged sword, and I see it. I know you see it. Um,
Hmm.
we need competition for
Hmm.
sure, and we need these other companies to step up, and hopefully with
Yeah.
AI uh, they can develop these other things fairly quickly. So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm super optimistic from a technological standpoint. I just wonder how this is gonna play out. I think it's only a matter of time before regulators turn to this more seriously because Microsoft just has, I mean, an incredible moat. They
Yeah,
also have a business that's printing billions of dollars in cash flow. So if you just look at companies like like Slack, which was essentially the best in class enterprise messaging software before Microsoft rolled out Teams. Um, Teams was also, you know, before Teams, Zoom was the best in class video conferencing platform. And from a technological standpoint or quality standpoint, that might still be the case. But what Microsoft can afford to do, and why I think it's just a matter of time before they look at this more closely, is Microsoft has a business that where they can afford to just create those products, make it minimally viable, just good enough to get the job done, and offer it for free as a part of their suite.
yeah,
And that is not good for competition. So it'd be very interesting to see how the regulators treat this moving forward. But I mean, from a productivity standpoint and just a technologist, like I'm super excited. I can't wait to get my hands on some of these tools and start testing them out. But from a business standpoint, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
yeah. And I'm wondering if maybe even the idea of a monopoly, like if you were to take the platform as a service, like it, I think Microsoft will soon become the only platform in the ecosystem to provide all the things, and therefore does that make them a monopoly in even broadly across in since they are building the entire ecosystem, the full end to end. And maybe
Hmm.
that's where they get punched in the gut. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe time will tell.
Oh man, so cool though. Oh,
Yeah,
all right. Do we want to move on with Neuralink?
yeah. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's talk about putting chips in people's brains.
Yes, yes. So
Stir up the whole conspiracy theories.
last year, Neuralink. For those who don't know Neuralink, probably been living under a rock. Uh, Another one of Elon's companies. He is he's so concerned about AI So this is why Neuralink was incepted. Was he was very concerned about AI and us and our inability to actually connect with AI. And so with that, he built Neuralink to hopefully reach a wanted position where our interaction with AI will be somewhat seamless, or it would be the best chance possible of humans actually interacting with AI. And so sounds far fetched, and but at the end of the day, he said, "Look, we're already cyborgs. We basically are processing our information through a tiny straw when we are working through a phone." Because we are essentially our cyborgs. As soon as we are staring at a phone, and I think, what does he call our thumbs, our uh, meat fingers,
Yeah.
to process this information to then communicate with an intelligent system. And so essentially building a chip to be able to be embedded into your brain, which is essentially the Ethernet cord to the internet. So you being able to think through and process information and communicate that information uh, as fast as we process, a search through Google today, but being able to then harness that knowledge almost instantaneously. So that's the wanted position of Neuralink, and so they've already been doing animal trials, and that's been super successful. Been really cool to watch. Uh, Even a monkey play Pong, where they incentivize it by feeding it food, and so it would use a joystick to play Pong, and then they eventually just moved the controller away, and it was just able to control the entire game with its mind. Mind blowing to watch. And so now it was a matter of getting this into human trials to hopefully solve the initial use cases of blindness, paralysis, and then I forget the last one. It was even speech, like muteness. And so they got denied last year by the FDA, but now, as of this week, they just got cleared for human trials. So all really crazy, but obviously the big conspiracy theorists out there have high concern. Dane, where do you fall on the spectrum?
I mean, I think it's easy to just take a one-liner and say, "Wait, you want to put a chip in my brain? Are you kidding me?" Like, it's like some form of like government mind control. This is what it sounds. That's what it sounds like, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But it's really not. And I think it's for those who may not know, there's essentially the biggest YouTuber in the world, Mr. Beast. Recently did a couple of videos where he paid for thousands of people to have their vision repaired, or completely restored. Some people lost vision over the course of their life. Some people were just born blind and couldn't see at all. And you see the reaction on these people's faces when they realize that they can see, like, for either the first time in a long
yeah,
time or the first time ever, and how emotional they get because of how incredible that is. And the same can be done for hearing too. And essentially, that's just vision. What about people that I got into a car accident and has some form of paralysis, or some people that were born without use of one or any of their limbs in the first place. It's a very different lifestyle, and I think most of us really take that for granted. Um, and essentially, what they'll be able to do is to put a chip that goes in. They have a robot that does the surgery, because there's no way that a human can do the same thing, because these wires are so incredibly small, and they go into different portions of your brain and can stimulate the neurons, and get those neural pathways firing so that you can actually control different parts of your body and restore function, by stimulating different areas of the brain. And so I think that it is, especially in the early phases, obviously long term, the AI discussion is it's still some ways away, and we can theorize about whether that's good or not. But I don't think that there's anyone in the world that can argue that restoring the use of limbs to folks that are paralyzed, or restoring vision to people that have never been able to see anything, or see color, or hear anything. All things that we really take for granted. I don't think there's a single person in the world that would say that that is a bad thing. That is, it's an incredible goal that they're striving towards. It'll be a massive benefit to humanity. Um, and that's where I stand on it.
Hmm.
So don't get hung up on this whole portion of, oh, like, scary putting chips in your brain. Like, no, like, this is, look at what the technology that we're working on will be able to do. It's really incredible.
Yeah, and I think my pushback on anybody that tries to, no one, let's just change it, change the story. Um, what if you could put a helmet on and achieve this thing? I'd be willing to bet probably 95% of the people arguing against doing this would be like, oh, yeah, totally, I'll do that. I mean, we buy glasses that enhance our vision. We have no problems with that. Um, for some reason, it's about it being intrusive. This intrusive idea of going inside your brain, and then all of a sudden, that's where we draw the line. And I think there's just got to be some we, people who are super against it really have to contemplate the why behind that, because at the end of the day, we seem to not have any problem with having some sort of external solution uh,
Mhm.
to impairments. However, I mean, even uh, heart rate monitors today, not heart rate monitors, pacemakers. We've grown accustomed to being okay allowing a machine to be embedded inside our heart and continue that pulse. But
Mhm.
again, it still begs the question of like why then is there an issue with this, especially once these human trials go, and I have no doubt there's going to be success, and it's going to be mind blowing, and I think whether or not you believe in the long term vision of what Elon's doing, this alone is like you said, Dane. It's a monumental shift in just how in human flourishing that we've never been able to imagine until here in the very near future. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just something to think about for those that are questioning it. Uh,
Yeah. Very under the radar company. If you're not someone that follows Elon Musk's ventures very closely, it's most people don't actually know about Neuralink. But it's got a very they're working on a lot of cool stuff
yeah,
that's really going to benefit humanity. Um, so that's like the more sincere side of things. Uh, I I would like to talk about what are some of the things that much further down the road, as we start to get closer to merging human intelligence and artificial intelligence, what are some of the things that or use cases that you're excited about, Trey?
oh man. Well, we didn't really cover it in the previous section, but I think this whole move to essentially just in time data or just in time processing. Like right now, we're building structures, and I mean, even just thinking of like an analyst, will build these dashboards, and they'll just exist in the ether for whenever you want to tap into them, and then they'll just be there. But I think what this move with, especially when we get to now being essentially directly connected to the internet, this this just live feed of information and knowledge, and it's like I just always imagine that scene in the Matrix where he gets plugged in, it's like I know kung fu, like the the what we even know of what learning is, like thinking it's this 18-year long drudgery of development, thinking that eventually you can get to a point where a 5-year old could essentially know as much as a 30-year-old or
Mm,
whatever, where age and knowledge gap is not there. Like
right.
it's just hard to conceptualize. And so then
It's
think
really
about
hard
the
to
exponential
conceptualize.
curve of even more so. We're already in an exponential age of development, but then you bring human knowledge to an exponential level as well, and the processing of that knowledge. Yeah, yeah. So I really am lost for words on what that is. But
Right. And like some of the far out use cases that we're thinking about and that Elon has spoken about is the ability to learn information. So if you want to learn about physics, you can literally like download a textbook, a physics textbook, like into your brain. You want to learn another language, you can download another language into your brain. It'll probably take some time for your for you as someone still with the physical mouth to be able to build up that muscle memory and how to say everything correctly, but you'll know all of the words, all of the grammatical structure and things like that. But then we also might get to a point where we don't even communicate using our mouths
yeah, it'd be
because we
more.
can
It's more
you can
inefficient to use our
communicate.
mouths to create noise to receive. Yeah,
Exactly. You can just essentially beam your thoughts to someone else and they can beam your thoughts back, similarly to how you can, instead of having to use your thumbs to type on your phone, you can just think a thought, send a text to someone without having to use a physical device or use your physical fingers to put the input. You can just say, I can just think in my mind, hey, send a message to Trey, tell him that he's awesome and the best podcast co-host ever. Um, and I won't, so the amount of physical effort needed and mental bandwidth to do those is going to be significantly reduced. Um, Now, do you think it's a good thing? I mean, there's a lot of discussions right now about like, is it a good thing to connect AI to the internet at all? Well, if it can reason, and there's a lot of theories about how this could all go sideways. Do you think that there's any downsides to allowing humans to essentially merge with some form of artificial intelligence or to be have your brain directly connected to the internet?
I mean, I will say with any technological advancement, there's always it's a two-sided coin. There's always potential for great evil, and there's also potential for enormous good. And so you have to always live in that tension of knowing as soon as you make the thing that there will be someone that wants to try and undermine that and create chaos. And we've already seen developments of that, even with ChatGPT and what people have rolled out, um, with Chaos GPT and all that, where the intent is truly to destroy the world. And it's all fun and games right now. But yeah, plug that into something truly life threatening. Yeah, it's really scary stuff to be concerned about. Uh, so I guess that's my short answer. I would say though the powers that be that are trying to push this forward are trying to be contemplative about it. Again, going back to what Sam was trying to do with the regulators is like, look, we are conjuring a massive intelligence here, and
Mhm,
we can't just risk breaking things to then create regulation around that. Uh,
mhm.
it's we are developing a nuclear bomb in some sense, and you can't just let it go off and be like, oh, we should probably fix something. So most definitely, and hopefully with developing this intelligence, it's going to help us make better decisions around regulation for these things too. So I hope it just goes in tandem, and it has to be super close with the development of it, so that the development doesn't uh, go past what regulators are trying to do to keep it in line. So yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's my answer.
So I mean, some of this stuff sounds super far out. Trey knows that. I know that. Um, I think what's also important to realize is that there's never been any point in human history where the present wasn't the best possible time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
In term From a technological standpoint, in terms of medical technology and a whole bunch of areas, there's never been any better time to be alive. And the reality is that the future is, 50 years from now is almost going to be indistinguishable from life as we know it today. And all you have to do to really wrap your mind around that is to think about taking a simple piece of technology like your phone, which you carry around in your pocket every day,
It's a good picture.
and think about what would happen if you were to time travel 50 years back into the future and say, "Hey, I've got this device. It's got neural networking processing chips that can process yeah, billions of processes per second, blah blah blah." And people would literally laugh you out of the room and say, like, "That's insane. Do you know how much a computer costs?" Um, like, or just why would we even do that? I saw this thing on Twitter this morning where Bill Gates went on one of those like daily shows or late night like comedy shows, and he was telling people that the internet was going to be this super cool revolutionary thing, and the host is literally like laughing at him, like making fun of him. He's like, "Well, you can watch a sports game, uh, on the internet." And he's like, "Have you heard of a radio?" And like things like that. And the audience laughs because everyone thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I know that some of the stuff that we're talking about is really far out there, and it's like it's going to be like life with these things, and some of these things that we're talking about is going to be indistinguishable from the life as we know it today. And something inherent in the humans, we fear uncertainty, we fear change because we can't quite wrap our minds around it. But if you understand that the present, there's never been any better time to be alive than the present. And even though what we're talking about now may mean that life is indistinguishable from it, like as we know it today, um, I believe that we will push this in the right direction, and that um, so long way of saying, don't be scared about some of these far out things that we're saying,
Yeah.
because or just talking about or spitballing about. Um, because the benefits will far outweigh the cons. So stay optimistic. Think about what it could be like. Think about how you can contribute, and think about the lives that are going to be changed for the better because of some of this new technology that we're talking about.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that, you said don't be scared, and uh, there's several people just in my sphere that just want to say, "Oh no, that's for those people over there. This is never gonna happen or infringe on my life," and so the head's in the sand, or it's way too it's way too broad and big for me to even wrap my head around it. So I'm just not even gonna deal. And so just even Dane's call is press in, like even in the most minute ways, like chatting with ChatGPT, just to see what it can do. Like engage, because that's how humanity comes together and collaborates, and then ultimately pushes forward for good, and not. And that way you also don't get stuck behind as well. Um, and so, yeah, that is my 2 cents too.
Yeah, embrace it, embrace it. See how you can use it. It's not for these people or those people. Like, just use it and figure out how what works best for you.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, cool.
it's good.
Do you want to talk about space?
Spice.
Space. Okay, this came across your radar, Trey. Why don't you break the ground for us?
Oh man. Okay. I didn't look too deep in the article, but this is actually SpaceX's second private civilization space flight to the ISS, the International Space Station. Uh, Huge news. Like, but the fact that it was just so under the radar, I don't think I've seen a lot talked about it. I know Dane, you're following it, but this was like for me, it's mind blowing that that is that wasn't broadcasted as big as the Starship launch that happened a few weeks ago, where millions of people were watching that go off. Like the fact that we're sending civilians out into space, just casually, now is like, what? Like we are here, and again, just like thinking like no better time than the present. Like we are just, it's so amazing that we again are sending these people, just average Joes like you and me, to in a rocket to space. Like, yeah, amazing. But yeah.
Why does space travel is something that's really exciting to me. I'm curious. Why is space so interesting to you?
Oh,
What is it about pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible so inspiring, do you think?
I think I I think humans can so easily just get enraptured with the day to day, head down. Even people, broad thinkers like me, and ideators like me that try to look up above the brush to see things in a broader light. Even I, in still tend to fall onto what happens around this earth. And it's until I go to somewhere like Colorado and I'm just laying there in the night and I look up and I'm like, we are so small, but we are a part of this. We're a part of this entire ecosystem, that we just, when you just choose to look up, it almost begs the question, why not? Like, why are we not thinking about this? And uh, it's the wonder. I think it really is. I think it's the human wonder that we wonder about things about the earth all day and our aspirations for what we can tangibly, concretely engage with on a regular basis. And I think when we think about space and we think about what's out there, it's just like, oh no, that's not possible. And so we give up so quickly. But oh yeah, like seeing things like this happen, it just brings me like so much, like, yes, we can do this. Like we can be a part of something so much bigger than even this big rock that we're on today. Is just so inspirational and exciting, and that's why Interstellar is one of my favorite movies. Is just seeing what is out there to be explored that we haven't yet, to be a part of, is it's just beautiful. So
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind. Maybe a video that we can put in the description below, that I recently rewatched is it's titled "The Most Astounding Fact" by Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he's asked, what's the most astounding fact about life or our existence or something along those lines, and it's that we are made of star stuff. We are made of atoms and molecules that were formed inside the heart, inside the core, in the immense heat and pressure of stars. The stuff that you and I are made of is the stuff that stars are made of. That is where like our material comes from. And so he talks about feeling connected through the universe because as he looks up and he sees all these bright stars, burning hundreds of thousands, millions of light years away, we're made of the same material that they are. And there's a sense of connection to that. Um, so just connected to the universe and what's out there. The other thing that comes to mind is on the notion of us feeling so small. I went for a run a couple of weeks ago, and one of our friends brought a drone, and he was flying the drone above us as we were running. And I was like, man, we look so tiny, and so insignificant. Um, and in the grand scheme of things, human consciousness is like this tiny little candle in this almost infinitely vast darkness. We don't know of any other sentient life in the universe. And that is something that is incredibly special. And we've only emerged over the last couple of thousand years, really. And like Earth is what, more than 4 billion years old? So in just in the scale of Earth's existence, humanity is like a tiny, tiny little infinitesimally small speck
Mm.
of the universe's existence. Um, and I think that that is special, and it's something that we should fight to preserve. It's something that is because it is so precious that we should ensure that it continues forward. Um, and eventually, in a couple 100 million years, our sun will expand and the Earth will be engulfed. And if we do not expand beyond this planet and beyond our solar system, that tiny little breath of consciousness of sentience will get snuffed out. And so we all have survival instincts, and going to space and pushing the boundaries and trying to make life multiplanetary and eventually interstellar, I think is incredibly important because I love humanity. I want humanity to succeed and to continue on for forever, until the end of time, if there ever is an end of time. And so I think that it's very easy to get caught up in, yeah, we got so many problems here on Earth. Why don't we fix all of that before we turn our attention to going to other planets, or um, fixing up a red rock like Mars? Doesn't that seem like a massive waste of resources? No, it's not, because consciousness is worth preserving, and we need to do it at some point. And we have the technology today, um, with with what companies like SpaceX and Rocket Lab and um, Relativity Space are pursuing. So many others, hundreds of companies that are working on space, but um, they're noble missions. Um, and I think that's what I find inspiring about it. So,
Mm.
you know, I really hope one day to make it to space, maybe make it to the moon, and who knows? Maybe maybe when I'm like 65 and they're giving away Mars tickets, I'll be like, yeah, put me up. I'll go die on that red rock. Cool. Whatever, you know. Um, but I think it's incredibly inspiring. I'm super grateful uh, for Elon Musk bringing attention back to the importance of space. It often doesn't get the right gets a lot of criticism. Starship's rocket explodes before getting to orbit, and the media is like, Starship explodes, big failure, blah blah blah. And then you look at like the SpaceX employees in the office, like watching the spaceship blow up, and they're all like, "Yeah, yeah," because like they're doing things that are unprecedented, and it was just their goal to get off the launch pad, and this is the first vehicle that is designed to be interplanetary, to eventually be interplanetary, so that we can establish a self-sustaining colony on Mars. And I think that that's super awesome. It's super exciting. There's a reason that the whole world was captivated by the space race to get to the moon, because it's this. For me, it's like the same reason that we watch the Olympics. We want to see people do incredibly hard things that have never been done before.
Yeah.
So something about doing hard things that is inspiring, that is captivating, and I think that space falls into that bucket. And I would love to see more people just recognize how awesome it is that we're pushing these boundaries, and to rally behind it and get inspired about it and think of it as exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I, everybody wants, or not everybody, a large sum of people want to say, "Oh, this is just the billionaires' fun thing to do over here," and I think we underestimate. Yes, like getting to space and all those things is amazing and mind blowing and everything that we just covered. But there's technological advancements that are happening because of these developments. They're highly affecting us on Earth. The fact that we can now create reusable rockets, that's an insane development for supply chains across the globe. The transport of goods and services, and you being able to travel to Greece now for $200 instead of $2,000. It's like those are the implications of these developments today. So
In a fraction of the time too.
yes, right, exactly. So I would just say it's not just for the billionaire class. It's benefiting all of humanity by just even in our current day. Obviously, reaching to the stars is the wanted position, but to think that there's not going to be residual advancements that affect us here and now, you just be mistaken. So yeah,
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's so easy to overlook uh, the benefits to us, people of Earth, on Earth, that advancing space exploration is gonna bring. I remember watching the 2015 Senate hearing where Elon went before Congress and the United Launch Alliance was lobbying against allowing for increased competition in the space industry, and then the numbers on tax savings, which you, me, everyone pays to, the amount of tax savings that came from allowing competition, allowing SpaceX to compete for NASA contracts and stuff like that, it's tens of billions of dollars per year, that you and I as taxpayers are able to save. Um, and then yeah, so being able to like long haul travel. I live in Canada and my family's in South Africa. Tell you what, I am not a big fan of having to travel 16 hours confined in a plane. Like it sucks. It's absolutely terrible.
yeah,
Um, but we'll get to a point, and this is on SpaceX's roadmap, is to revolutionize long distance travel. So you could go from one side of the world to the opposite side of the world in an hour. In an hour, like that's insane.
yeah,
That's insane. Um, and so like there's plenty of benefits to us as well, um, from a tax and cost perspective, because now we're getting to a point where we can fully and rapidly reuse rockets, right? Like no one would get on a Boeing, no one would fly into, between cities if every time you had to scrap the plane and start over
right.
again. um, so the development of this technology is going to have tremendous benefits for us on Earth. So that's absolutely something that we should rally behind as well.
Couldn't agree more. All right, y'all. Thank you all again for another awesome week here on the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Again, like, subscribe, and comment. We take all feedback. We love to hear from you, and we want to improve. Micro improvements along the way. And so hopefully by video 100, we'll be killing it and having fun, and it won't be so awkward with me just jabbing on about random stuff and than me questioning why I even said
Dane
anything.
going on rants.
Yes.
Just kidding. I can't promise that.
Thank you all again for joining, and definitely look forward to next week. I have no doubt there's going to be some really cool stuff to talk about then too. We only got halfway through our talking points for the day, so thank you again for joining us, and have a good day.
Catch you next time.
Yes.